The hosts and guests on Everything's Messy podcast are not licensed healthcare professionals. The discussions in our episodes are not personalized medical advice. Always consult a qualified healthcare provider for medical guidance. Never delay seeking professional medical advice or emergency assistance because of our podcast. We encourage consulting with a healthcare professional before making any significant health changes. By listening to our podcast, you agree to the disclaimer. Thank you for listening to Everything's Messy podcast.
Sure. So pain is powerful. And so, 9 times out of 10, speaking to what you're just talking about, people aren't going to change unless they are very uncomfortable, and it usually has to be incredibly painful. The only other way is it's because it's something that's you're so elated by it that you're so excited for it. But generally, 9 times out of 10, it is a painful moment that is going to be that shift, that pivot that you don't have a choice but to make a decision to change.
Hey, welcome to Everything's Messy podcast, where we celebrate the beautiful but messy life experiences that most, if not all, people go through. Get ready to embark on an exciting journey through the raw and unfiltered stories of everyday people. Here, we dive into messy realities of life, from making messy mistakes to triumphs and everything in between. Are you sensing a theme? That's right, it's messy. But this just isn't about the mess. It's about finding strength and resilience in the midst of it all. We'll explore how health, fitness, and wellness play a crucial role in navigating life's twists and very messy turns. And we'll challenge conventional systems, because sometimes the most unconventional paths lead to the greatest discoveries. Join us as we embrace the messy, beautiful, and endlessly fascinating stories. Each episode is a testament to the power of our messy journeys and the beauty that emerges from the mess. So grab your favorite beverage, coffee, sparkling water, whatever it may be, and prepare to be inspired. Are you ready? Let's get messy. All right. Well, welcome to Everything's Messy podcast. I have with me today, I'm so excited. I have Jennifer Pilates with me. She is absolutely amazing. She specializes in regenerative health and wellness, a celebrity trainer, a mindset coach, and which the one I'm excited about is a top-rated podcast host herself of Empowered Within. Welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I'm so excited to be here with you today.
I'm so happy to have you. And our show is messy and chaotic, and so I hope that will, get you to talk about the mess that we always find ourselves going through. And I want to start with your messy story and how that sort of came to be and how that shifted or pivoted the life that you thought you were going to have.
Yeah, absolutely. So it takes us back to 1997, a fabulous year.
Yes, it was.
I was actively climbing the corporate ladder, swift away from the New England over to Colorado to run a retirement community. I had been in the industry since I was 15 years old.
Wow.
And so I actively was pursuing this as my dream, as my goal. I knew okay, become executive director, have a house by 30, 2.5 kids, the whole, I had what I thought was supposed to be the plan, but really it was only what I was programmed to know. Wasn't necessarily what was in my heart. And so that's an important part of this story. So as the story goes, I was driving home from work. I was specializing in Alzheimer's disease for quite some time. And I was in a terrible accident. It was 6 lanes of highway, and I was at a red light. I looked up, and it was one of those, you just see it coming, and there's just nothing. There's nowhere to go. And so there we have it. And from that day forward, my whole trajectory of life changed. I was in and out of doctor's office 8 hours a day.
Wow, 8 hours a day.
8 hours a day, generally speaking. I had a lot of soft tissue internal damage from the base of my skull down to my pelvic region. And if anybody knows anything, when you have a broken bone, it'll heal pretty quickly. It'll come back together. But when you have soft tissue damage, that can be with you a lifetime. And with any trauma that you have to the body, it goes into a cellular level. So there's so much more that we need to address besides just the muscle, just the bone, just the tension. We need to get to the emotions of it. And so I was at a place where my words didn't match my mind. I would go to say, "Could I have an apple?" But it was an orange. Like it was a lot. It was a lot. It was
Wow.
way more serious when I look back on it now than what I even knew being in it, because I wasn't cognizant of what was going on.
Wow.
So I was seeing all sorts of neurologists and psychologists and therapists and massage therapists, chiropractors, acupuncturists. I mean, you name it. And the blessing was that it was all this happened just when I was living in Boulder, Colorado. So at the time, it was the mecca of a wellness community.
Sure.
I was able to experience all sorts of modalities that I would not have had that opportunity. Being a country bumpkin, I say, from Cape Cod. I didn't know of a lot of this. I didn't know to explore all of this. So that was the blessing. I always say it's very important to look and take the lesson, but also really look for the blessing, because in every moment of every day, there's one to be had. And so that was my blessing there. And then through that, I was just in so much pain, and someone referred me to Pilates. And so I started rehabilitating with a woman who was an incredible trainer in Boulder, and we rehabbed together for a year. And it took that long for the settlement back in the day to come through.
Sure.
Wow. A lot of money, but I always say, no coincidence. It was the exact sum needed to go to the amazing Pilates Center, which is in Boulder, which is the Harvard of all Pilates schools.
Yeah. Okay.
And so come to the end, at that point in time, my career had changed. I'd been back part-time, but the company wasn't doing well. They were expanding quicker than they could. And in seeing all of this go down, I sort of put myself on the chopping block and said, well, if someone needs to go, lay me off, making a very adult decision, being in my, mid to late 20s. And then one day that really happened. And I was shocked. I was shocked that what I asked for happened. So, be careful what you ask the universe for.
Sure.
All of this aligned. And so at that point, then I just leaned in. It was like, there was no question. I was like, oh, then everyone keeps saying I'm really good at this Pilates stuff. I should just go to the school for it. So I'm going to do that. And so at that point, everything pivoted, and I began going to school while I was still going to therapy. At that point, it was part-time. And then I had various other small jobs that I would have never. Became a wedding planner. I worked in an Italian restaurant. I did all
Like fun stuff that maybe you would never have otherwise done.
stuff that probably all my friends were doing in their 20s, while I was like, just hammering out the corporate world. So I would say I do things a little bit reverse. I always come in the back door while everyone else goes in the front door. And so I had all these incredible opportunities while I still kept my hands dabbling in the senior living industry. But every time I dabbled, I got kicked back out. The universe was like, did you not get the message?
Wow.
It's something else that I always tell people, the universe will whisper. The universe will whisper signs to you, will whisper messages. But if you're not listening, it will get louder and louder until you get the frying pan upside the head. And so luckily at that point, I really started listening. And so I really just started to experience entrepreneurship. And I didn't even know what the word was. I mean, I say that now, but back then I didn't know. And so I was blessed. So through a traumatic situation, I found my way to Pilates, which after rehabbing for a year, I went to the school. And from that moment forward, my mission was that I just wanted to help one person. If I could help one person not be in pain. And now, well over 2 decades later, I've helped thousands of people around the world. My specialty is rehabilitative care, and it just means so much that I can be of service and give back.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I love how you just started with just one person and how that's kind of been the domino effect and where that's gone. So I wanted to back up a little bit because you had said something about, you had kind of the plan and what you were doing. As you were rehabbing the body, and you talk about having to be told a couple of times of where you should be, though, is your mind still of that, I need the security, I need the job of what I thought I was going to be doing? Or was that just an instant, okay, I'm good, what's next?
It was a little bit of instant gone and a little bit of what's next. I've had a mentor since the time I was 15 who was amazing, who helped me accomplish all that I did in the senior living industry. And one of the things that she cautioned me well before I ever took the job, like, I don't think this is the right move for you. And I was like, no, I took the job for the money. I took it for the location. I took it for two things that I coach people on now and say, never do this.
Oh, wow.
And so she knew how miserable I was. My passion being in that industry is being an advocate for residents and being an advocate for their families. And the higher I climbed, the further I got away from what I loved about the industry. Whereas she could see that for me, I was really good in sales and marketing. I was really good with the families, but I just kept seeing the ego, kept seeing, the dollar signs. You got to have the title. You have to do all of this. And that wasn't the truth. So in essence, at that point, she was really great with saying, even again, when I went to take another job, she's like, are you sure that that's what you really want to do at this point?
Wow.
And so it was an instant, just, I'm not doing that anymore. And it was so pivotal because it wasn't even like I had a moment to think about it. And here's the thing, because cognitively, I was not okay. There wasn't a cognitive thought to be had. Now, remember, I couldn't put an apple to an orange or an apple to an apple. So there wasn't that cognitive ability. That's when my creativityness of painting came out. And I think that's why when I was able to experience these other modalities of being being a wedding planner and, helping to run an Italian restaurant and all of these things and painting, it just broke me out of my shell. And literally my life went from black and white to color.
Wow. And you start experiencing joy and just what do they call it? The happy busy, where you're just kind of fluttering along, and you're busy, but it's happy because you get to do different things that you've never done before.
Kind of. I was still in pain for quite some time. So at that point, there were happy medications. So there were happy times that were influenced because at that point, that's where they needed to get me back together.
Sure.
I was in Boulder. I will say at one point I had a doctor who said, you do, at that point I had asthma, and he said, you do have asthma. He's like, how about, we get you on some marijuana, but you use a bong. And I remember calling my family being like, what? And I'm like, it's fine. I'm going to bake brownies and it'll all be good. And so, yeah, there were some happy moments, but it wasn't happy because at that point I was solely back together. I mean, it really took years for me to align body, mind, and spirit. I remember one of the most impactful things that one of the psychologists said to me at that point was, you've never lived in your body. And I didn't understand at that point in time what that meant. And God bless this person, because I know that they recognized that to get to the answer of that question was going to be way too much based on what I was currently going through. Yeah. However, years fast forwarded, and that has come back up again in different psychologist sessions and therapy sessions. And now I understand why. And so there were so many intertwining, messy, beautiful moments throughout my years that were always leading me to being who I am today, which is this incredible, empathic, intuitive person who just loves to help people heal.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Gee, wow. And so insightful for that psychologist to be able to tell you that. I often say sometimes I feel disconnected or whatever, but that sentence of just not maybe fully living within your body, wow, that kind of just hits. And I just want to sit with that for a minute. That's incredible. And so you go down this path. And so you say this healing takes years and years and years. At what point do you shift from the focus of getting better and the healing to now you're like, okay, that one person that I want to help is now turned into an idea, perhaps? So how does that come to be?
Well, literally the moment that I graduated from the Pilates Center in Boulder, I immediately just went out and started. I remember I was working in a Pilates studio there in Boulder, and then there were some family things that were going on. So I went back to the East Coast, and I immediately just tried to open up a studio. Like, there was no thought I immediately just became an entrepreneur. There was no thought process. I was like, this is what I'm going to do because this is how I want to help people.
Right.
And at the time on Cape Cod, literally no one had ever heard of Pilates. It was like such a struggle after struggle after struggle. And at that point in time, my best friend was still living out in Colorado and was like, why don't you come back? And I'm like, yeah, I'm coming back. So I went back out. And, again, synchronicities aligned. I started training people right away. I was training the ski team. I had a person who looked at me and who saw the image that I had, the visions that I had, and said, here's an investment. What do you need for a Pilates studio? And handed me a check. That's how my first Pilates studio ever came to be.
Wow. Talk about meant to be.
Exactly. And then from there, it became, okay, well, I liked living here. So while I was building my entrepreneurial dream, I still was building and healing from the inside out. So I still wasn't whole. So while I was doing that and I was happy within my work, I still wasn't happy within myself, which I can say now, but I didn't know that then. There was just always something missing. And so I was always running and in search of that. So I wasn't happy enough with having built this incredible Pilates studio out in Colorado. So then I went back to, the East Coast again. And then I opened up another studio. And then I opened up a studio on the Cape and one in Boston. And I had all these studios and it was great and it was wonderful. And I'm training all these athletes. There was still something missing. There were still dynamics that weren't great.
Wasn't lining up. So you say that you didn't know now that you weren't happy, but at any one time were you like, why isn't it enough? Were you questioning like, yes, I'm happy on the surface, but was it a desire that you just thought maybe you wanted more, or you truly knew there was something that you needed to fill?
I would say the biggest part came when the second time I was back on the East Coast and I had a Pilates studio in Osterville, Cape Cod, and I had one on the Back Bay on Newbury Street. You couldn't have asked for anything more. And I wasn't happy. I wasn't happy because once you got there, where do you go from there? It was like I tapped out. And so it was during that time that there were some pretty traumatic things going on in my family. And I had really gotten back into therapy again. And this therapist looked at me and said, you don't have to be here. And the exact look that you just gave was the exact look. I'll never forget. This was on a Friday. She goes, you don't have to be here. You're not married. You don't have kids. You've said it yourself. You've done everything that you've wanted to do here. Now what?
Yeah.
And at that point in time, I had been thinking about moving back out west. And I'd always said, if I go back out west again, I'm going all the way, which would mean California. And within 3 days, so that was on a Friday. By Monday, I had already had plans laid out. I was selling one Pilates studio. I was just going to shut down the other one. I mean, when I make a decision, I make a decision and I go for it. And at that point in time, I didn't tell anyone. I just began the transition. And so I was headed to San Diego. And in the midst of this work, I do a lot with GoDaddy, free promotion there. And when I called in and I was explaining some of the things I was doing, they were like, well, why are you doing this? So I said, oh, well, I'm, adjusting my business and going from the East to West Coast. And they said, have you ever heard of Scottsdale, Arizona? I think I've heard of it, but, nothing.
Who decides to go to Scottsdale?
Needless to say, an hour after talking to a GoDaddy person, I did.
Yeah. Yeah. And now it's huge and booming and it's got everything. Yeah. But you kind of think back then, at least San Diego, Scottsdale, San Diego.
I mean, you really couldn't go wrong either way. And so the interesting aspect was, so at that point, I was like, okay, I'm going to Scottsdale. 90 days later, I was moving.
Wow.
So I wasn't messing around. And then when I got to Scottsdale, I had already sort of known some Pilates people, but it was messy. The people that I did know, it was messy. I did get introduced to a gentleman who was over in California and just around the San Diego area. And so he was training the chargers and he said, I need help. I'm going out of town. So for the first 3 months that I was supposed to be living in Scottsdale, I literally was in San Diego training the chargers. So for my first 3 months, California really was my home. And from that moment forward, I really felt like I knew California more than I did Scottsdale. And so I've always been back and forth because I've had so many clients out there. And so it was in Scottsdale. And when I was full-time there, 9 years, now I'm part-time, that's when my real healing, that's when the deep healing, it started with that therapist who propelled me to shake things up. And when I was in Scottsdale, then that's when there was so much that I was able to see. There was so much I was able to heal that I didn't know. And even to this day right now, I want everyone to know, it's not like you go, oh, I'm healed and you wake up. No. Healing is a journey.
It's a huge
journey. With you for your lifetime.
It's a messy journey.
It's very messy. And there are things that I've been through now that in the last few years, it was another sort of shakeup. And so now I'm healing that. But what I want people to understand is that every moment that you've been triggered is actually a really good moment because it's just a light being shined on an aspect that still needs some healing and still needs some work. It's not a bad thing. If you can really have that mindset shift and go, oh, I still need to work on that. And so I would say in the last 6 months, there's just been an incredible healing opportunity for me where I am that has propelled me to this next level. And so it's been a journey. I mean, every place I've been, I've, at this point traveled cross country, I think 20 times. It's crazy.
Yeah, they always talk about, what was the aha moment? And just speaking for myself, it wasn't an aha moment. It was an aha event, unfortunately. And that put me on the path to want to heal, not only physically, but mentally, and find the wellness that I so desired. It took a very big event, unfortunately, for that to occur, kind of the same way with you. And I mean, yes, do I wish that I could have done things before to prevent the heart attack? Absolutely. But knowing what I know now, I'm not sure that I would have put into the work that I'm doing now. So it's kind of hindsight, I suppose.
Right. Agreed. If you hadn't gone through that, you wouldn't be who you are today. So I don't live with regrets. I just live with what's the lesson and what's the blessing. And I take that from whatever that moment is, that episode is, that traumatic incident is, and then I move forward and keep that part with me so that I don't forget.
That's incredible. So we were talking a little bit about some things before I pushed record, and I had mentioned to you that I was listening to your new bonus episode, and it talks about the power of pain, or the power to pain, and the power of pain, of what you can do with that. Can you talk a little bit about that?
And so I have found it generally to always be that way.
Yeah,
my life
too.
for the most part. It's, and pain, it doesn't have to be physical pain. It could be emotional pain. It could be you're taxed mentally. So I want to expand on that word pain. It's not just about physical pain. It's about all of it. And, life is painful and life is messy. Life is also incredibly empowering and beautiful if you're willing to go with the flow. If you are going to continue to go up the river, old saying, you're going to continue to go up the river. But if, they always say, if you want to change your life, change your mind. And it's literally that easy and that difficult. Every moment of your life, you can take a breath, pause, and change the trajectory of where you were going and how you were getting there.
And like you said, it does sound so easy, but it is so hard. And I think sometimes we find comfort in just staying stuck. And that's why it takes one of those aha events to kind of shake us up, because otherwise we wouldn't have moved one way or another. We just kind of find comfort in stuck.
Right. I love that you say that. About a year and a half ago now, there was another traumatic event that happened in my life. And in the midst of it, I mean, this was one that was not pretty. And I just remember being like, why, God? Why? There are so many other ways this could have panned out. Why? And I literally came across a quote, and it's from the Bible, and it says, if I did something along the lines of, if I didn't make you uncomfortable, you would not have moved. And it was so powerful because literally that had to do with me physically moving geographically. And I said, wow, okay, I get it. And so that goes back to that point of, do you always have to suffer and get uncomfortable? If you listen to the whispers of the universe and you listen to the nudges, you don't have to get uncomfortable. You may get anxious, and then let me remind you that is nothing more than excitement without breath.
I like that.
So, it's all in how you want to interpret it. And can you stay miserable and stuck and say, well, I'm comfortable here? Sure, but then let's address the fact that that's also a trauma response from something that has happened in your life.
Very much.
So there's no way of getting out of healing. Oh, by the way, everyone, right? It doesn't matter what it is. You're not getting out of it.
You can try and ignore it, but it will manifest in its own way somehow, somewhere. Yeah, very much.
And we're here. I mean, this is called the Earth. The School of Earth. This is a school. We're here to learn. We're here to experience as much as we can. And our time here is very, very short. And so it is something to heed the message, get the lesson, grab onto the blessing, and run.
Run. I like that. I like that a lot. So you talk a little bit about sort of being an intuitive empath, and the empath part sort of resonates with me because I do feel like for a long time I just absorb everything around me, and I feel people's pain, and sometimes I have to just close myself off and just be like, okay, I've had enough. But I love how you talk about the intuitiveness of it. And so what do you do with that? How has that helped you, benefited you?
Oh, it is my superpower. What do I do with it? What don't I do with it, Sarah? Oh my gosh, I love it. And so and I'm sure there's empaths out there going, she's nuts. It took a long time to become an empowered empath. You go through the phases of one, you don't even know that you're an empath. You just know that like you feel like crap every time you're around people, and then you're exhausted and you need to go lay down for 3 days. And I was there. And then you get to the point of you realize someone tells you about the word empath and you're like, what is that?
Right.
So you Google and then you're like, oh, so now you have to learn, you think you have to learn to protect yourself from everyone, when in fact, it's really about empowering yourself and in knowing the difference and setting good boundaries. Because 9 times out of 10, every empath has become that intuitive empath from some sort of trauma that they've experienced in their childhood.
Right.
And it's a rarity that I have so far yet not met anyone that has not, gone down that path. We've all been there. And so when you can begin to walk through those steps and understand it's not about protecting yourself from people, it's about empowering yourself and feeling good about saying no, feeling good about setting a boundary. No, that's not for me. No, I don't want to do that. I mean, no is it's like my favorite word.
Yeah.
Favorite word. And people should use it more. And so it's taken a journey. I mean, it's really, God, I think it's been 11 years now, maybe.
Oh, wow.
11, 12, 13 years since I really knew that I was an empath, because at that point in time, I was working with healers and more spiritual people who were like, oh, you didn't know? And I'm like, no. I'm like, why is everyone else fine in our group and I'm in a puddle on the floor? They're like, oh, because you're the one that feels everything.
You absorbed it all.
I took it all in. And so I want people to understand that when you think of the jungle, you think of the elephant. Well, you're going to now. You're going to think of an elephant in the jungle. The elephant is always the one, if something is wrong, if there's a storm coming, whatever the danger that's coming, the elephant is going to be the one that is going to begin to trample through the jungle, making its noise with its horn to let people know, to give the warning. Elephants are powerful. They're very smart. They live forever. We're not going to live forever.
Yes.
We are very smart, and we are the empowered empaths. We are the elephants of the world. We are the ones with our intuitiveness that can give the warnings. And now every empath is different in their abilities and in their gifts and what you choose to work with and what you don't. It's like a muscle, you want to work with it. And for me, I really dove into it, and I really realized that from day one of my Pilates practice, when I thought everyone was just getting fixed from Pilates, it was Pilates, but it was also the healing energies that were coming through me, because there were lots of times where people would come in pain, they'd leave fine, but I had their pain.
Oh.
So it's years, right? This has been a huge, long journey of understanding and knowing, and going from being a very disempowered empath to taking on everyone's energy and not understanding, to becoming an empowered empath, where now I can discern my energy from the collective energy. Meaning, like a few hours ago, all of a sudden I was just real not nice. I was feisty, and I was like, ew, like this feels gross. This isn't me. And then I was like, oh, what's going on? Now for me, I'm the uber sensitive empath. So I'm going to feel a solar flare. I'm going to know if there's an earthquake in California, if there's one in Nigeria. I'm a very, very connected to the earth, very connected to something's not right, and understanding the timing of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've really just empowered myself with that. I have empowered myself to, like we talked about earlier, I said, I don't say yes to every podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not for anything other than, if it doesn't feel right, then it's not right.
Yeah.
And I don't have to give an explanation. My old self, my unhealed self, would have sent like a paragraph, and I'm just like, no, thank you.
Right. Right.
And that's what you begin to learn as you become that empowered empath. You understand that it isn't a curse, that it is the most amazing blessing and your most empowering superpower if you're willing to use it.
Okay. So not protecting yourself from people, but setting boundaries for your own energy intake. Is that kind of, okay.
That was the lesson that I learned, because I got into this fear. oh my gosh, I have to wear all my crystals to protect myself when I go to, the grocery store. Well, if you're coming from fear, then you're in a low vibration. And if you're in a low vibration, you're only attracting more fear, which means you're attracting that energy. And I'm aware of that. It doesn't mean that I don't still pick up stuff now and again.
Well, sure.
You do, but I don't get pummeled by it. I also know my limitations. Like for me, I mean, the first half of my life, I went to so many musical events and so many big gatherings and all this, but I also numbed myself out to be in those environments.
To be able to do that.
Whereas now I know I was doing that because I couldn't handle being in those environments. So there's a great, one of my coaches, he does incredible events. I really prefer the virtual events because, and even that is a lot of energy for me.
Yes.
Doing podcasts is a lot of energy for me. So I bide my time and I know what works for me. And that's what works for me. I'm not someone that can block out time and do 5 podcasts in a day. That doesn't work for me. And that's okay.
That's a lot.
It is, but
that's
some
a lot.
do that, right? And it's okay. And so the biggest thing I would want people to know if they're feeling sensitive or considering themselves a highly sensitive person or an empath of any sort is listen to yourself, lean in and trust yourself because you know what's best. Your body knows what's best. Because every time you go against that, it never bodes well. Never bodes well. So just practice that muscle of trusting yourself.
I like that. I like that so much. I'm just starting to disengage with, doing the right thing. Sometimes, doesn't align with what I feel, but I always, didn't want to disappoint or I didn't want, and so I'm just now starting to disengage that part. And that in and of itself, I have to remind myself, oh, no, the right thing is what is right for you because you don't want to be rude. You don't want to be this. And it's this whole checklist that you go through. And I have to just literally stop and shut myself down because it's you have to practice it. It doesn't just you can't just say to yourself, you're not going to do those things anymore. And then it happens. You have to continuously practice that. And that has been hard.
100%. And I always say that's really, for me, that's working with my inner child and helping to heal my inner child from old trauma from being a people pleaser because I had to navigate everyone else's emotions to be able to survive and feel safe.
Yeah.
And so even the other day, there was something that I've been doing for a while and I said, well, I'm not going to do that anymore. It's no longer in alignment for me. And my other self was like, but these people love you and they're going to miss you and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, hold on, but it's not working for me anymore. And then to your, what you're saying is I always say, well, I'm leaving these people, but not really. They have other options. They can see me on demand. They could coach with me. So I'm not up and leaving people. So it's a daily healing journey of working with your inner child and working on your people pleaser abilities to let that go. And instead of pleasing everyone else, please yourself.
Man, that's hard.
It's very hard.
That's hard. That's so hard. And you talk about you've sort of worked through regulating your nervous system after toxic abuse and stuff like that. What does that entail?
So that's a lot.
Is it messy?
It's incredibly messy and gooey and colorful and it's all the feels. Regulating your nervous system goes back to being an empath. And our nervous system, for me, I realized I was living in fight or flight my whole life. And so when you begin to understand that and begin to work with your nervous system on that cellular level, on that deep, deep level, emotions and things come up from places you didn't even know. And I always tell people, and you don't need to know.
Yeah.
What you do need to do is be in the flow with those emotions, allow them to come out and release them.
Yeah, that scares me. I'll be honest. I'm scared of
Oh, well, I've been there. I've been there, but I would say through my Pilates and particularly in the last 6 months, I've been guided and shifted on an intuitive level to shift my Pilates practice where it's getting back to the original state of Pilates, which truly focuses on the breath and the body connection. So when you are focusing on your breath and you are tuning that to your movements, that is what somatic is all about. And when you're working through somatics, that's how you're working and releasing through your body. So that's how my one program, the Somatic Pilates Healing Program, began. And people think it's a workout. I'm like, it is not a workout. It is far from a workout. It is breath work. It's the breath of the Pilates is all level 1. And then as you get into level 2, you do a little bit of exercise. But because you are releasing the emotions and you have no idea, like, where is this coming from? But what I will say is it is the most feeling that you can have, because it's like 10 pounds of weight being released from you.
Wow.
And because you're going to that subconscious level, and that's where the beliefs are. That's where the trauma is. That's where all the ick is. And I'm a big believer in, you don't need to go back and revisit everything that ever happened to you, because all that's going to do is put your body back in fight or flight.
Sure.
Actually just in fight at that point.
Yeah.
Or disassociation, because every time you're triggered, your body just goes back to how it felt. So when you can release at that cellular level, at that emotional level, it's life-changing. And so for me, the Pilates somatic healing, that has been amazing. Pilates in general is amazing for that, when you are truly doing real Pilates. And I say that not to discredit anyone, but because just like anything else over the years, it's gotten incredibly watered down. It's not what it once was. And that's why I was guided to shift even how I was working with people and training people back to how the first time that I ever went into the Pilates studio and I laid down on what we call the reformer, it's a piece of equipment. I just laid there and I had my feet on what we call the foot bar, and she had me breathe. The tears that came out of my eyes, there was no explanation. In that moment, I felt safe with her. I was connected to my body and I was just releasing.
Wow.
And so again, it's that simple and that complicated all at the same time. It doesn't have to be complicated, and it's not, but if someone makes it, it really can be. So my Pilates somatic work is huge. My Pilates movement in general and my meditations and my Reiki, very important for me. Working with my light therapy patches has been a game changer. I mean, the whole first half of my life, I mean, talk about anxiety riddled, depression I didn't even know I had riddled.
Is that like the red light therapy?
No, it's very different. So they're patches that look like a little Band-Aid that you simply place on your body. I have one here. I can show it to you. Looks like that. And so this one I happen to have on the back of my neck. And so what it does is it utilizes the body's energy in the form of an infrared heat power source. And what that does is that activates the patch. And so the patch then reflects that light back to your skin, which then stimulates copper peptides, which begins healing and regenerating stem cells. New stem cells, by the way. So, and this is all organically. Nothing from the patch. It's 100% non-transdermal. It's safe. There's no stimulants, no drugs, no chemicals. Nothing goes into your body. And so the first half of my life, I like to say, I was on like every medication, asthmatic, like you name it. I didn't travel without an inhaler 24/7. This half of my life, like nothing. I don't even take vitamins. I do whole food capsules. So my fruits and vegetables are freeze dried, put in a capsule, and that's how I ingest that. And so the patches, how I even got started with them, I've been using them for 14 years, is because they can literally get your body out of fight or flight in under 15 minutes. That's how I started with them. And then fast forward all this time, now I am working with the ones that are regenerating my stem cells. And, you know, I don't wear glasses anymore. I can see at night when I drive. The enamel on my teeth is, I mean, my dentist, this is blown away, is thicker. Oh, there's other things. So it also begins, there's a lot of cardiovascular system things. So you've spoken of some heart stuff that you've had. I've had some heart stuff that I don't always talk openly about. But a few years ago, I had a heart surgery. And again, another traumatic, messy event. And if it wasn't for the patches, I mean, and even at that point, like I was so next level. I was so in shock. Like this was something so out of left field. And what it has done is it's helped so much in the healing process, healing the heart muscle, healing the heart tissue. Where once there was a leaky valve out of nowhere, no, and that's not there anymore. Cholesterol that was high is now level. Hormones that were ridiculously off, because as an empath generally, your hormones will be off because your nervous system is off. Everything goes back to your nervous system. This has helped to balance all of that. So life can come at me and I can sit here and I can, go through this, and this. I don't have to have a freak out. I don't have the anxiety that I once had. It's not to say that I don't have, triggers and things like that. I'm human, absolutely. But the healing that this goes through, it's utterly amazing. So within the first 24 hours, the patch begins to reset 3,000 to 4,000 genes to a younger, healthier state.
Wow.
24 hours. So literally you can place it on if you're in pain, and 9 times out of 10, the pain goes away right away. But, that has happened for me. Sometimes it does take, if my SI is out, it could take a few days, but generally speaking, you're out of pain pretty quickly. Within the first 1 to 3 months, it's amazing. The stem cells activate, and they lead to an increase in collagen in your skin, which decreases your wrinkles, which, just, oh my gosh, promotes hair growth to the point that I have learned how to cut my own hair now because my hair grows so fast. And for anyone that is losing hair, not only do you, within the first 3 months, get your hair back, but it comes back your natural color. Gray's goodbye. I only have a little bit of gray on the top of my hair. Everything coming in the back, all this dark.
Yeah, it's dark.
I haven't had that since I was a kid.
Wow.
And the natural highlight is just the natural highlight from the sun, which is amazing. So that's the first 3 months. Then you get into 3 to 6 months, and you're looking at just total repair. And what's amazing is that the light technology just knows where your body needs the healing. It's very intuitive with that. And so they're actively at that point, they're creating a deep healing in your body, and they're repairing what's been damaged, and it's beginning to reverse the whole aging process, which is pretty amazing. And then when we get into 6 to 12 months, that's so next level. We have one study that showed that 14 out of 15 people, you're going to love this, they lowered their cardiovascular age by an average of 8 years.
Wow.
In 6 months.
That's
using a patch. And so we like to say this isn't anti-aging, but this is completely age reversing. I remember after the first 3 months when I started the stem cell patch that I have on now, and I was in Arizona, I hadn't seen my friends for a few months, and they were like, they came up to me and so I'll do this for you. So anybody watching, they were like, do you see what's happening?
Yeah, it's bad.
Like nothing.
Right.
Like it's just, I'm not saying Zoom's doing a little, but like nothing. They accuse me. They're like, what have you been doing with your skin? Like, it's amazing. And I said, I haven't been doing anything. And so you drink water, you have your patches, and you literally begin that healing inside and out. And so I had used them for 14 years on myself, on my animals. Friends and family shared them. And then the business partner that I originally started with, he's called me and he goes, hey, why aren't you like doing the business aspect of this? And I go, I just kind of got a lot going on. And so we started talking, and after talking and doing the research and diving deeper into it, and I thought, shame on me. Like, I need to be screaming this from every rooftop that I can. And so starting last year, then I've really been, sharing it on such a larger capacity, because I was always just sharing in my Pilates studios with my clients, with friends. But now it's in seeing what it's done for me in my cardiovascular system, which I'm completely very, very in tune and sensitive with. It's been amazing. And so every day, the testimonies that I have coming in, like I sit here in just tears and feel so blessed, because we have people, who have had Parkinson's, who haven't been able to brush their teeth or shave, and suddenly they put a patch on and the tremors aren't there anymore.
Wow, that's a pretty powerful claim for sure.
Well, and that's just it. And so we don't diagnose. We can't say we're healing anything.
Sure.
All I can say is
the testimonies.
Patch on. The testimonies are pretty amazing. And so it's just next level for me to be able to share that and have that a part of my business as well.
Right. So, and maybe I missed it, but this is your product?
I work with a company called LifeWave. And so I work through them, and it's their product, and I help just spread it around the world. And again, my mission is much bigger here. My mission is to patch a million people this year. So our overall company is 1 billion, and we're getting pretty close. But my mission is 1 million people, because I feel the more light you can spread in this world right now, the healthier people are going to be, the more healing's going on, the more God's light you're spreading, the better off we're all going to be.
So if somebody wanted to work with you, I know you talked about virtual and things like that. Do you offer something virtually, or is it okay? Can you tell us where to go for that?
Sure. So the best place to get in contact with me is my website, jenniferpilates.com. And I'm happy to answer any questions, continue the conversation. You can find all of my on-demand Pilates videos, meditations, the Pilates Somatic Healing Program, that's all on demand. My coaching, intuitive readings, my book, the patches, it's all there. And you are welcome to sign up for the newsletter, as well as if you'd like to have a complimentary consultation, be that for training, the patches, or coaching, that's available for you as well.
Wow. And we had talked about the books before we started recording, but did you want to mention the books as well? Because I think that's probably pretty important too.
Yeah, the book, The Change series that I co-authored with Jim Britt and Jim Lutz and Les Brown, was an amazing opportunity. And that book you also can find on my website, which is all about learning to live empowered within.
I love that. I really, really love that. And then, of course, your podcast, which is absolutely incredible. And tell us about it.
Yeah. Yes. So the Empowered Within podcast with Jennifer Pilates began a few years ago. And we, much like you're sharing messy stories. We're sharing all of the stories with people from around the world, from my next door neighbor to the celebrity down the street, all talking about their challenges, everything that they've ever overcome to living the empowered within life that they're living today.
I love that. And I thoroughly enjoy your podcast. So I hope everybody goes to listen to that as well. So you've been fabulous. Thank you so much for coming on Everything's Messy podcast. It was an absolute joy to have you. And maybe we can have you back again.
I would be honored, Sarah. Thank you so much. I love everything that you're doing. Keep shining your beautiful light.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much for listening to Everything's Messy podcast. If you don't mind, if you'd head on over to wherever you listen to the podcast, like, subscribe, maybe leave me a review. I would really appreciate it. Also, make sure to check out my new website, www.everythingsmessy.com. Social medias where you can find me, Instagram at Everything's Messy Podcast. Same with Facebook. I'm on X at Everything's Mess. And if you'd like to reach out to me for email, I'm everythingsmessy@gmail.com. Once again, thank you so much for listening, and keep it messy.